Joining us now is Democratic State Representative Chris Turner, who represents Grand Prairie, Texas. He's the chair of the Texas House Democratic Caucus. And also joining us, Eric Cooper, President and CEO of the San Antonio Food Bank. Thank you both very much for being here. It is a dire situation there in Texas. Mr. Cooper, let me start with you. From your vantage point, please tell the audience exactly how dire the situation is right now.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. You know, at the onset of COVID-19 here in San Antonio, we went from feeding 60,000 people a week to 120,000 people a week. And in this storm, it's been paralyzing and really the inability for us to move. Roads were unsafe, and so we knew there's this huge demand, but it was a struggle to get the families the food that they desperately needed. So we really pivoted to meals. Many of these households lost power, so they couldn't prepare the groceries we were planning on delivering. They lost water. And so as the temperature has risen yesterday, today, we've been able to put together the distributions. Today alone, we fed 24,000 people, all desperate for groceries because they've tried to seek groceries at the grocery stores. And as was mentioned, they're sold out. They just don't have the inventory. Everybody needs water. And so water has been a huge demand item. And we're just doing the best we can to make sure families get this basic need taken care of.
You know, Representative Turner, from your vantage point as a member of the Texas State Legislature, what are you hearing from your constituents, and what can you do to help them when it comes to getting access to food and water?
Well, John, thank you for having me. And you know, I'm so inspired listening to Mr. Cooper talk about the incredible work that he and his team are doing in San Antonio. And I'm seeing that play out across North Texas as well. Just good people working hard to help their fellow Texans who are in a dire situation right now. As for myself, my staff and I have spent all week working to help our constituents with basic necessities of life. Getting electric power turned back on in their homes, getting natural gas service restored in their homes. Because one of the things we discovered a couple of days ago is, yes, a lot of people were without electricity, but the natural gas system had taken a real hit. So some people got their power back on, but their heaters that are powered by natural gas wouldn't turn on. So their houses were still 40, 45 degrees inside or colder. And so we've been working to solve those problems house by house, constituent by constituent. And yes, we have, I also represent the city of Arlington, which is under a boil order because the water pressure dropped to a dangerous level a couple days ago. They hope that by Sunday, the water will be safe to drink again. But my constituents in Arlington are facing the exact same situation as 14 million other Texans are right now.
You know, Representative Turner, the Texas Tribune had an article yesterday with the headline, "Texas was seconds and minutes away from catastrophic months-long blackouts," officials say. And it says, Texas Power Grid was seconds, minutes away from catastrophic failure that could have left Texans in the dark for months. If operators had not acted in that moment, the state could have suffered blackouts that could have occurred for months and left Texas in an indeterminately long crisis. That's pretty startling, but I'm just wondering, is Texas out of the woods yet, just given the fact that we know that the last big cold snap in 2011 led to recommendations that weren't followed?
Well, you're absolutely right. And so I would say we're out of the woods this week because the temperatures are warming up now. And we'll be above freezing tomorrow and stay above freezing tomorrow, at least here in North Texas. And but we fully expect and know that we will have severe weather again in the future. Maybe it's not this year, but it could be next year. It could be the year after. And that's the nature of weather, particularly in this time of changing climate where we have more and more extreme weather events. So Texas has to do a better job of being prepared. And you're right, in 2011, that was a catastrophic storm, not as bad as this one, but we should have at that time required power generators to weatherize their equipment so this type of thing wouldn't happen. And it was left to be completely voluntary, and that's one of the reasons we're in the mess that we're in this week.
Mm-hmm. You know, Mr. Cooper, there was a story in the Texas Tribune on Wednesday about how the Texans running out of food as weather crisis disrupt the supply chain. And as I was listening to you, I thought of this article because, you know, once things get back up to the point where you are able to get enough food again and enough water again to Texans, the fact that the food supply chain has been disrupted, where, you know, livestock growers are running out of feed. How long do you think the food disruptions in particular will last once the power is back on, once the water is back on?
You know, it's going to be a very long-term recovery for Texas agriculture. I mean, I talked to some dairy farmers that were dumping milk because they couldn't get trucks there to pick it up. Cattlemen couldn't feed their cattle because they couldn't get feed in. And the Texas produce across the winter garden, this freeze is going to damage so much of that crop yield. And so it's going to increase costs, place a lot of produce items maybe out of reach for the families we serve. It will mean less donations, less support that we might typically get. But it will start to come back. It's just going to take time. And I think bridging the gap from today to that time is what Texas food banks are trying to do. And the disparity for families, I mean, many of the families that came through the line today, a husband and wife, they had tested positive for COVID. They were trying to stay quarantined, keep their kids from getting the coronavirus, and their lights went out. Their water stopped. Their house was freezing. Their kids were trying to get in bed with them to stay warm. These are desperate circumstances for families, and, you know, we're doing all we can, and our community is trying to support us, but more needs to be done.
Wow, Texas State Representative Chris Turner and Eric Cooper, thank you very much. You know, America is with you and praying for you. Good luck.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.